Okie dokie, let's do types of unemployment. We can group types of unemployment according to the reasons why people could be unemployed. So we could say someone, or there is a percentage of the unemployed who are unemployed because they're still shopping around for a better job. They're looking for a better job. There are people who are unemployed because they lack the appropriate skills. The requisite skills required or demanded within the economy are not possessed by these people. The legal wage might be too high, so there might be a percentage of the workforce who is effectively priced out of the labour market. And there might be insufficient aggregate demand for goods and services in the economy as a whole. So the economy might be in a recession, where there's very low economic activity. The first two are called, respectively, frictional unemployment and structural unemployment. We call the first frictional unemployment because we're usually talking here about a person who has voluntarily left their job, or maybe they've been fired, but they've left their job and are searching for an alternative means of employment, but they just haven't found it yet. It's not that they don't have the skills required within the economy, objectively speaking. It's not that they're asking for a wage which is too high. It's not that the economy's in a slump and no one's hiring. It is that this person hasn't been matched up to an employer who is out there somewhere demanding someone with the skills that this person possesses. So this is frictional unemployment. There's friction in leaving one job and gaining employment in another. The other type is structural unemployment. So this is where the structure of the economy, remember way back when we talked about the structure of the economy, we said there was a services sector and a manufacturing sector and an agricultural and mining sector. And if we burrowed down into each of those, you could look at different industries within those sectors. There's a financial sector, there's the education sector in services, the hairdressing sector is in services, the manufacturing sector, there's the car manufacturing, there's telephone manufacturing and so on, footwear manufacturing, and then there's agricultural and mining, so different types of farms, wineries, corn farms, market gardens, tomato farms, beef, blah blah blah. Okay, now each one of those industries requires skills that are to some extent specialised, but they'll require those. They require those sorts of skills. They'll require a certain level of education and experience and so on. Now there might be people who don't possess the requisite education or the requisite experience, and so are simply not suited to any area of the economy which is demanding labour. Structural unemployment often occurs over a longer period of time as the structure of an economy changes. So, for example, if you get the manufacturing sector declining and the services sector growing in, for example, information technology and financial services, then there will be people who were specialists in the manufacturing sector, say working at Mitsubishi, in the Mitsubishi car factory, with a certain set of skills. That industry goes into decline, they become retrenched, they may have difficulty in shifting into the industry which has growing employment prospects. So the people who are being made redundant from the car industry might be classified for some period of time as structurally unemployed. Until they acquire the requisite skills, they would be classified as structurally unemployed. Now, those two types of unemployment taken together are called natural unemployment. We could say that this is natural unemployment in the sense that these types of unemployment are natural features of any dynamic capitalist economy. It's natural and inevitable to some extent that people who are moving from one job, people will move from one job to another, and when they do, there will be some period of time in which they're unemployed. Or they find that perfect job for them. They're fractionally unemployed. That's normal. It's also arguably normal or natural that economies change their structure over time and the requisite skills required will change over time. This is also partly due to technological change, inevitably. As the rise of one industry occurs, it will have certain kinds of technology associated with it, which which others won't necessarily possess, and the people who work in them work in other fields won't necessarily possess knowledge of that technology. Also, the technology within particular industries changes over time, and unless people update their skills, they will become structurally unemployed because they won't have the required skills. Okay, so the argument goes that this is naturally occurring. The other two types of unemployment, however, are called classical and Keynesian, or often called classical and Keynesian unemployment. Sometimes, say the first one, is called wage-based unemployment, and the second one, Keynesian unemployment, is sometimes called demand-deficient unemployment. Anyway, so if the legal wage was set, quote-unquote, too high, that is, it was set, if the legal wage, the price of labour, was set above its equilibrium level, the equilibrium level being the wage rate at which the quantity of labour demanded equals the quantity of labour supplied, the wage rate were above that, then the quantity of labour supplied would be greater than the quantity of labour demanded by employers, and so there would be surplus labour, that is, unemployment. And this is commonly known as classical unemployment. The other is insufficient aggregate demand unemployment. So this is where there is insufficient demand within the economy as a whole to warrant or justify production and therefore employment at a level which would fully employ everyone at the going wage. Now, if there's insufficient demand in the economy as a whole to maintain full employment at that level, it means that there will simply not be jobs available for people who are unemployed. It's not because they're looking around for work, it's not because they lack the appropriate skills, it's not because the wage rate is too high, it's because employers simply are not willing to hire more labour because they don't believe that the produce generated by hiring that labour, they don't believe it would be sold. So there would be no point in hiring the labour. So these workers are unemployed simply because the jobs aren't there. These two types of unemployment combined together are called involuntary unemployment. They're involuntary because there's absolutely nothing you can do about them as an individual worker. If the legal wage is set too high by legislation, there's nothing you as a worker can do, legally anyway, to avoid being unemployed. You're simply priced out of the market by legislation. In the case of aggregate demand, if there is a recession, employers simply aren't hiring, then there's nothing that you personally can do about that. You can't end the recession yourself. You have to wait for something to change so that jobs start to become available, employers start to hire people again. So these two types of unemployment are involuntary unemployment. Okay, so here's the terminological twist. When involuntary unemployment is 0, then we say that the economy is operating at quote-unquote full employment. That doesn't mean there's no unemployment. Okay? There can still be the frictional unemployment. There can still be the structural unemployment. But you're operating at full employment. Simply because the definition here of full employment these days is no involuntary unemployment. It's just a definitional issue. So, for example, if we had a situation where the frictional unemployment rate were 2%, and of the unemployed, 3% of them were structurally unemployed, they lacked the appropriate skills and training, and let's say the number of people who are unemployed because the wage rate was set too high is 0%. And let's say the number of people who are unemployed simply because the economy is in a recession and firms are simply not hiring because they don't believe they'd be able to sell the product, let's say that type of unemployment is also 0. The only reason that people are unemployed, let's say, are because they're shifting between jobs or they lack the appropriate skills and training. In which case, we'd say that the unemployment rate overall is 5%. Now, since all of that 5% is natural unemployment, we say that the economy is operating at full employment. The unemployment rate is 5%, but the economy is operating at full employment because that 5% is all natural. So the argument goes. I should say that there is considerable debate amongst economists as to two issues here. One is what the natural rate of unemployment is, that is, what it numerically is. And second, a slightly deeper and more difficult debate about whether there is such a thing as the natural unemployment rate at all. That is, it's not a debate about is it 5%, is it 4.5%, is it 4%, is it 6%, but does it even exist? Is it meaningful to talk about natural unemployment? I'm not going to go into that now, but suffice to say there is, in fact, some debate about the very concept itself, in addition to what the empirical estimates of it would be.